Hello folks, Jared here from GamerSlice, and thanks for tuning back in to the channel. We've been on a bit of a hiatus, but we are back now, or at least I'm back. And today I'm going to be sharing some of my first impressions of Dishonored 2 with you guys. So, as you might have heard if you've been keeping up on the game, it's had a pretty rocky launch on PC. There's lots of performance issues and whatnot, even on like high-end graphics cards. But this only really affects the game in like open world areas, especially in daytime. So like when you get to the second level, the issues escalate. And there's also a number of bugs too. The main bug that I've encountered so far, it wasn't this way at first, but probably the fourth or fifth time I launched the game, the screen started flickering and it wouldn't even launch. So I found out some workarounds, and basically what it is it's a full screen bug. When the game is in full screen mode, it has issues, but it's kind of unpredictable. But ever since I started having the issue, every time I've tried to start in full screen, it doesn't work. So I just have to do borderless window. Now, I don't want to sound too harsh, like I'm just constantly bashing the game out of the gate here, but Dishonored 2, quite frankly, fails with its two-playable character model, or its split hero concept. There's actually an article, a Forbes article, written by Paul Tossi. I have not read it yet, but the title is Dishonored 2 totally fumbles its split hero core concept, which just by that statement alone I agree with, because at the beginning of the game, after the intro cutscene, they're establishing what's happening, you get to pick between Emily or Corvo. However, I was assuming, and I had fears about this later on, but I was assuming initially that you would be able to play as, either Emily or Corvo between missions. So if you do mission 1 as Emily, you could switch mission 2, you could switch to Corvo and play that one as him. Unfortunately, when you start the game and you pick the character, you pick that character permanently for the rest of your playthrough. So, in that case, in order to play as both characters, you're going to have to do 2 separate playthroughs, which is quite a shame. The way it works into the story, it makes sense, but they wish they would not have done it that way. But I chose to play as Emily because, I wanted to play as a new character and experience the new powers and everything, but I almost picked Corvo, and of course that would have been a big mistake, because in order to properly critique the game, I think I would have had to do a second playthrough. However, when I do the review, I'm only going to be doing the playthrough as Emily, and then I will play through the game as Corvo whenever I have time again, and then maybe share some additional thoughts on it in a later video to see whether it improves the experience a whole lot. So far, though, the movement in the game is very smooth. So, when it does run good, when it does run at a stable frame rate, it's very smooth, and for Emily, the movement's also very fast. They've also made some enhancements to parkour abilities. You can actually vault while sprinting now, too, which is really nice. But there are some difficulties with the movement as far as crouching under tables and sometimes under windows. Sometimes it doesn't work as well as it did in the first game. But most of the time, it's fine. Now, at this point in the game, I am 2.5 levels in. I've done about half of the 3rd chapter. And then I figured out, there's only 9 chapters in the game, which is the same length as the first Dishonored game. So I think the overall game length is probably going to be the same, maybe a little bit more, because the levels are more open. Level 2 certainly was. There's also more ruins and bone charms, which is one of the things that actually just adds to the length of it, because they're a little more open, there's a little more ruins, so you're probably spending more time doing that. There's also a bunch of more additional special actions, kind of like miscellaneous objectives or side quests, I guess you could say. Some of them are side quests, some of them aren't. But just like in Dishonored 1, there was certain tasks, special tasks you could do, and it would tell you them at the chapter results screen. But the main objectives, though, are straightforward. So any additional time you're doing in the level, like if you're just trying to do the main objective, it's probably going to span you about the same time as the first Dishonored game, which I imagine you could probably beat the game in about 12 hours or so. You can do it faster if you really wanted to, but for most players, if they were just focused on the main objective, I imagine it would probably be about a 12-hour game. So the game doesn't really force you into exploring, but you can explore a little bit as well. Now, the main improvement to the level design, it's not so much that the level itself, like the spaces the level takes up, is bigger. I think they are slightly bigger, but the main noticeable thing is there's actually more playable space. So whereas before you might have some buildings that you have to, or big obstacles you have to go completely around, this time you can actually go into the buildings and explore more of them than you could in the first game. So just like a lot of games these days, with the advancement in technology, there's just more playable space that they can pack into one area. which leads me to gameplay opportunities. Much like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which was the previous first impressions I did, Dishonored 2 has a lot of ways to approach situations, and they also, the first game, to its credit, really did well at that as well, and that was kind of one of the things that they like to point out through some of the tutorial sections of that. So there's a lot of approaches, especially with the more open levels that you can take, you know, coming from high, coming from low, just completely bypassing some objectives altogether in some cases. But one of the major improvements to gameplay opportunities is that now you can still enjoy the game and still, you know, you have a lot of different ways you can take out opponents without killing them. Whereas in the first game, you had to go all lethal if you wanted to like use pretty much any of your powers or gadgets. Other than that, if you wanted to do like a non-lethal playthrough, you're pretty much just sneaking up on dudes and taking them out in stealth, just choking them out. This time, you still are a little more restricted than you are versus a lethal playthrough, but you can actually do aerial takedowns this time non-lethally. You could actually choke people out in the middle of combat as well once you do a proper counterattack. So that I thought was a big improvement. Not only that though, but you actually have some non-lethal versions of gadgets this time, such as the Spring Razor. They have, you still have the Spring Razor, which is your lethal version, but they also have a stun mine, which is basically works exactly the same way, only it stuns opponents instead of killing them outright and decapitating them. So now you may be asking, well, what kind of powers did they give you this time around that are different? Well, Corvo's ability set, from what I can tell, is the same. Emily's set, though, is almost completely different, except for she does have dark vision, which her and Corvo has in common, and she has far reach, which is basically the same as Blink. The only difference is that, first of all, it has a much longer initial reach than what Blink does. It's basically the same distance as upgraded Blink, level 2. And with far reach, you can kind of use it as a slingshot ability. So when you're in midair and you're using the far reach power, if you keep pushing forward, you can actually slingshot yourself across the location. So you could really like cover a huge distance with this all at once. Probably twice the distance as you would if you were just using something like Blink at level 2 as Corvo. I also noticed you could upgrade some abilities like Blink, or like far reach. You can actually make it so it slows down time when you're falling and all that stuff. So I think this game, it seems to allow you to customize each individual power a little bit more than Dishonored 1, which I also like. As far as Emily's other powers, I haven't got a chance to use them, but Domino and Shadow Walk look pretty cool. Mesmerize, though, it's, I think, the most expensive one, but I would much prefer to have Bend Time, like Corvo has, rather than that, because they basically kind of serve the same purpose, except for Bend Time, you can do more creative things with it. It's just much more fun overall. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the AI. So, the enemies in this game seem to have a wider cone of vision, and in much ways they're much smarter, especially in combat. I'm playing on hard though, so it takes me way less hits. I mean, maybe it's just playing as Emily too, but I can only take maybe like 3 hits before I'm dead. So, but I normally, of course, try to play somewhat stealthy. I don't like to, go all out combat all the time. Mainly because in like Dishonored 1, high chaos endings get you a bad ending, but this time they still have high and low chaos, but I think it's a little less restrictive this time. As I said, enemies do have a wider cone of vision, but sometimes they just detect you. I've been detected for no reason in some places. Sometimes it's very inconsistent, like I've been in a fight with enemies where there's other enemies looking right at me, and then they don't come after me and they don't detect me until I kill the other guys that I'm already fighting, or knock them unconscious or whatever. So there's a few inconsistencies with that, but overall, most of the times when you get spotted, it's fairly legitimate. It's just the AI is way smarter in that regard. And also, peeking does not work as well as it did in the first game. You can't like expose your whole body when peeking. If you even peek out the slightest bit, sometimes they will still see you if they're looking directly at you. Which makes me think maybe that wasn't, maybe that was just an oversight in the first game. Maybe it wasn't something that they intentionally did with the peeking system. Now finally, I'll talk a little bit about story and characters. Just for the moment, they both seem pretty strong, but the story at this point, basically, as you might already know from some of the trailers, And there's a little more information that I can probably share without going into spoilers. But basically, there is a coup being staged to take Emily, or to replace Emily on the throne. And there's somebody running around called the Crown Killer that is killing noble people in her name. But she hasn't ordered it. So people are starting to suspect her and the current administration, I guess, of carrying out these assassinations. Then at Jessamine Caldwin's Emily's mother's death anniversary, somebody shows up who is Delilah Caldwin, who apparently is her aunt. She's got magical powers, and depending on who you don't play as, they get frozen in stone, and then you have to basically escape the city and try to take her down because of the coup that's being staged against you. So it has a pretty strong start, and it seems to be picking up somewhat in the third chapter, but I'm pretty optimistic about that. The main things holding this game back at the moment, though, are just performance issues and the split hero concept not quite working as it should. But other than that, so far, it seems like a really great game. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like, and also leave a comment if there's any specific content you would prefer us to do in the future. So thank you guys for watching this video. I'm going to be hopefully coming out with the review by next weekend, the weekend after Thanksgiving. Can't make any promises though, so stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll get some other content coming to you guys shortly that I've been neglecting for a while, and some new stuff that we can maybe get started before the end of the year. So thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, we hope to see you guys in the next video.